Hi everyone, this is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts, back again for a review for Lost World Jurassic Park. And so Lost World Jurassic Park is actually the sequel to Jurassic Park. It actually came out in 1997, stars Jeff Goldblum, Julianne Moore, Vince Vaughn, Richard Attenborough is actually in this film, Pete Postlethwaite, and a few others. And so when we actually look at this film, we actually see it's a darker toned movie. And so this movie is basically about Ian Malcolm is back into this franchise, and so he is actually assigned by John Hammond to actually go out into this like this naturalistic expedition. And so basically he wants a team of experts out there to actually go out into Isla Sorna this time, not Isla Nublar. So this is going to be a different island. So Isla Sorna, Site B, where dinosaurs are roaming free without any fences, without any people in the island, and pretty much just living their lives like actual animals. And so we actually have a little bit more of a darker toned movie, and when we get to the island, we actually see is that Ian Malcolm does not really want to be there. He actually rather be in the mainland instead of on an island where there's dinosaurs. And so he's trying to tell his team Vince Vaughn and also Eddie, the guy who plays Eddie, basically the character, that they should never be on this island because it is dangerous. And so they went out to go out and find his girlfriend, Ian Malcolm's girlfriend, Sarah Hardy. And so they find Sarah, who is actually watching a herd of stegosaurus roaming through the jungle of Isla Sorna. And so we actually have pretty much at first like a rescue mission at first, but then it goes straight into of actually being like naturalistic, watching these animals in their natural habitat versus poachers. And so this is where we actually have a clash between two groups. And so InGen is actually not run by John Hammond anymore. It's actually run by Peter Ludlow. And then Peter Ludlow is pretty much the nephew of John Hammond, and that actually gets really, really precarious here, is where you actually have Ian Malcolm and Peter Ludlow kind of actually butting heads about how these dinosaurs should be treated. And so at first, Peter Ludlow's crew of hunters basically take at least a few of each species of dinosaurs, except for the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and so they actually, and the Velociraptors, and so they actually take the herbivorous dinosaurs first, some of the smaller carnivores, but they will not take the bigger carnivores yet. And so, but Roland is actually wanting the male Tyrannosaurus Rex. That was his main goal. And then so you actually start to see, then you have Ian Malcolm's team start to actually free these dinosaurs from this camp, and then the dinosaurs destroy the hunter's camp. But then Vince Vaughn's character takes the baby T-Rex to actually have some surgery on its broken leg. And so then Ian Malcolm is trying to tell them, don't do this, otherwise you're going to bring in the parents. And so the T-Rex parents come right into the trailers and pretty much cause chaos. And so then the campsite for Ian Malcolm's team gets destroyed, and then the hunters actually save Ian Malcolm's team, except Eddie dies from the Tyrannosaurus Rexes, trying to save the team and the vehicles. And so then you actually have this journey through the island to try to get to this village where former InGen workers actually tried to actually make sure that they could actually contain some of these animals. But then once that site was abandoned, it was actually pretty much shut down. And Peter Ludlow kind of warns that if we go towards the center of the island, we're running into dangerous territory, and that is the velociraptors. So the velociraptors in this film are different from the Jurassic Park ones, and these I would call tiger velociraptors because they're striped and they actually are a little bit more cunning. And so you actually have a few deaths involved, and Roland's right-hand man gets killed by the copies, and then you actually have the T-Rexes causing chaos again, killing a few more people, and then you actually have the Velociraptors killing a majority of the hunters group. And so Roland actually was able to actually take down the buck T-Rex, and Peter Ludlow wants the baby, and Peter Ludlow gets the baby in the end. And so Ian Malcolm's group try to actually go through the village, and so Vince Vaughn's character gets there safely. And then we actually see Ian Malcolm, Sarah, and Ian Malcolm's daughter actually going through this village, and then they're chased around by the Velociraptors. And so they escape unscathed, and then they actually escape the island. But then they witness Peter Ludlow and his team actually take the bull T-Rex captured, tranquilized, and pretty much be ready to send to the mainland. And then they arrive in mainland in San Diego, and then pretty much you actually have the T-Rex waking up after it arrives in San Diego, and the T-Rex causes chaos throughout San Diego. And Ian and Sarah try to get the baby T-Rex back, and hopefully that the buck would actually ultimately try to go for care for its baby, and then pretty much they lead it back towards the boat. And Peter Ludlow still wants that baby to be on mainland, and then he just says, "Kill the buck, try to kill the buck." But ultimately he's unsuccessful. He gets killed by the junior T-Rex, and pretty much the buck T-Rex is tranquilized by Sarah, and then those dinosaurs are back off into Isla Sorna. In this end credit, and in the end scene, not the end credit scene, but the last scene is pretty much showing all the dinosaurs in their natural habitat in Isla Sorna. Now, when we actually look at this film, it's actually not as great as the first film. The special effects are still top-notch. It's just that the story is just not quite as good as the first Jurassic Park. Some of the characters are kind of weak, so the character build-up is really weak, and also it is actually not quite up to par in terms of standards of the first movie, like I mentioned before. And then when we actually have certain characters die, we're glad some of them are actually dead. Some of them we actually do want to know more about. Deleted scenes tend to actually give you a little bit more perspective on some of the hunters' characters, like Roland and his crew. And of course, Jeff Goldblum does a fantastic job in this movie. Julianne Moore does a fantastic job in this movie. Pete Postlewell kind of does a pretty good job. Steven Spielberg is a big fan of him, and Steven Spielberg returns as a director for this film. Now, a lot of people would say this is one of Spielberg's weakest films, and not quite really. It's not really one of his weakest films. It's actually kind of a moderate film in my book. And so the CGI is not too bad. And some of the dinosaurs in there, like the Tyrannosaurus Rexes, the Velociraptors, and the Stegosaurus, Parasaurolophus, the Pachycephalosaurus, all those dinosaurs look pretty good. But then it's still, gripe of this movie is that it is kind of lackluster compared to Jurassic Park. And so I would give this film probably a 3.5 out of 5, considering that it still give you a little bit of a thrill ride, but still it is actually not quite the same as the first Jurassic Park. And so, I mean, you can still watch this film. It is, I would say, just prepare yourself for actually having a lackluster story, but even though a darker toned type of movie, but it is not as dark as Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. And so, yeah, that's it. All right, now tomorrow I will actually be uploading the review for Jurassic Park 3. So stay tuned for tomorrow for the Jurassic Park 3 review. And featured item for this museum is this Albertosaurus hand. And so you can see the big, large fingers right here, and then you can see the vestigial finger right here. So little nub, and then there's the radius and ulna right here. So you got the 2 arm bones right there, radius and ulna. And that is half of an arm. It is not the full arm, it is just half an arm. Alright, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.